My unhinged sister-in-law relentlessly harassed her own pregnant daughter to the point she lost her job, then twisted the story to manipulate the entire family into turning against her. But when she least expected it, I flipped the script at the baby shower with one bold, unforgettable surprise that shattered her lies and made the truth impossible to ignore. My relative referred to my niece in a crude way. You see, my niece was 23 when she became pregnant. Her partner abandoned her the very same day. My intention was to gather the entire family to support her. However, my sister-in-law, Patricia, had different ideas. Patricia was the perfect example of someone who married for wealth, having wed my brother for his money. Designer handbags, exclusive club memberships, children in private education. Respectable young women aren't abandoned without cause, she declared at our Sunday meal. What message does this convey to the younger cousins? I wanted to defend my niece, but Patricia's father controlled my earnings, so I was compelled to remain an observer. Over the subsequent months, Patricia tightened her grip. At every family gathering, she stopped using Sophie's name aloud and instead referred to her by the derogatory term. She removed Sophie from every family group chat and persuaded almost everyone that she had been unfaithful. It was cruel, but Sophie could endure the rumors. She still had her profession and income until Patricia decided to take those, too. I was having breakfast when the phone rang. It was Sophie. Her breathing was so labored. I thought she was experiencing a panic attack. Patricia just informed my employer I was having pregnancy-related delusions and posed a risk to the infants at the hospital. They reduced my shifts to 1 per week. Her voice cracked. I'm 7 months pregnant and just lost my health coverage. I had spent months watching Patricia systematically dismantle Sophie for amusement. Observing was over. Now it was my turn to participate. The annual family gathering was scheduled in 2 weeks at Patricia's residence. Perfect. My 8-year-old daughter was going to carry out my difficult task for me. I spent every evening practicing with Emma. She comprehended malice better than most adults. Upon our arrival, Patricia's expression shifted from a feigned smile to unadulterated fury. You see, she had specifically requested that Sophie not attend. And yet, there she was, caressing her 8-month pregnancy bump, ready to celebrate. She is not welcome here, Patricia stated, her tone cold and unforgiving. Surprise! I shouted at the top of my lungs. It's Sophie's baby shower. I pushed past Patricia before she could close the entrance. 40 relatives turned to gaze. Patricia seized my arm, her nails digging in. Leave, or I will contact the authorities. Emma has prepared something special, I replied, searching for my daughter. Patricia was already retrieving her phone. I have a poem to recite, Emma exclaimed, capturing everyone's attention. She unfolded her paper and began in her clear 8-year-old voice. Patty. Patricia fabricated stories to Sophie's workplace, and now Sophie cannot be a nurse. Patty calls her terrible names I am not permitted to utter. She caused Sophie to lose her earnings. Please assist Sophie. Ahem. Thank you for listening. Patricia's own husband looked furious. Sophie's mother gasped. Patricia, you called her place of employment? Soon, everyone turned to face her, seeking explanations. Patricia stood motionless, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. Then she fled upstairs, her expensive heels clicking on the marble floor. The gathering transformed into an actual baby shower. Relatives apologized to Sophie, hurried home for presents, offered her funds for medical expenses. I was beaming with pride for both Sophie and Emma. I assumed Patricia would simply recover and disappear. However, 3 days later, Child Protective Services arrived at my door at 7 a.m. They had received a report that I was exposing minors to inappropriate content. They interviewed Emma alone. They photographed her handwritten notes as evidence. They stated the investigation would take a minimum of 30 days. I knew then that Patricia was not finished, and neither was I. The CPS worker who appeared was not just any investigator. I recognized the tennis bracelet on her wrist instantly. Patricia had boasted about that exact piece at the country club luncheon 2 months prior, showing off how her dear friend Victoria had acquired a matching one. My stomach churned as Victoria documented Emma's crayon drawings, her manicured fingers pointing at phrases while murmuring about disturbing explicit content. Emma had written about Sophie being called offensive terms, including the crude phrase. Victoria's eyes narrowed as she photographed each page. I wanted to scream that Patricia was her acquaintance, that this was all a setup, but I knew how that would sound. Paranoid, unstable, precisely what Patricia desired. The mandatory psychological assessment arrived 3 days later at the county office. I sat in the waiting room completing endless forms about my parenting methods. Through the glass partition, I glimpsed blonde hair and designer heels in the corridor. Patricia was at the reception desk, sliding a thick folder across the counter. The receptionist nodded, accepting what I could only presume was additional concerned family documentation. Our gazes met through the window. Patricia's lips moved slowly, deliberately. "For Emma's sake," she mouthed, her expression a facade of false concern. My hands trembled as I clutched the clipboard. That evening, Emma climbed into my lap, her small face troubled. She told me about the kind lady who kept asking questions. "She wanted to know if you taught me bad words about bodies," Emma said, fiddling with her bracelet. "She kept asking about the leg spreader thing. I told her Aunt Patricia said it, not you. But she kept asking if you told me to say that." I contacted my legal representative immediately. He listened to Emma's account, his silence growing heavier with each detail. When I finished, he sighed deeply. That's coerced testimony. They were guiding her toward specific answers, but proving it is an entirely different matter. The next morning brought unexpected optimism. Mrs. Chun, Sophie's elderly neighbor, shuffled to my door with her walker. She had witnessed Patricia's harassment firsthand. The late-night visits, the shouting matches in the hallway, the attempts to turn other neighbors against Sophie. "I'll testify," she promised, patting my hand with her wrinkled one. But hope quickly crumbled. Mrs. Chun required hip surgery next month. The only orthopedic specialist who accepted her insurance worked at Patricia's husband's medical practice. The surgery had already been postponed twice. She could not risk a third delay. My phone vibrated with a reminder for the mandatory CPS parenting class. At the same moment, Sophie called. Her voice was strained, frightened. She was experiencing contractions and bleeding. The stress was affecting the baby. She needed someone to drive her to her emergency prenatal appointment. I stared at the two obligations, knowing Patricia had orchestrated this perfectly. The CPS class was compulsory. Missing it would be recorded as non-compliance. But Sophie was alone, scared, potentially losing her baby because of what we had initiated. Patricia had even posted the class reminder on my social media wall that morning. Just ensuring you don't forget. Emma needs her mother to fulfill all the requirements. The post already had dozens of endorsements from family members. I chose Sophie. At the hospital, I held her hand throughout the examination. Her blood pressure was dangerously elevated. The doctor spoke in careful, measured tones about bed rest, stress reduction, monitoring. Sophie squeezed my hand tighter with each word. My phone vibrated constantly. The CPS coordinator, my lawyer, Patricia's father. I disregarded them all, concentrating on Sophie's breathing, the baby's heartbeat on the monitor. By the time we left the hospital, I had 6 voicemails. The CPS investigator's message was brief, professional. My absence from the mandatory class had been noted. Patricia had helpfully informed them I was prioritizing my vindictive agenda over child welfare requirements. The blows kept coming. My bank called about unusual activity. The legal fee withdrawals had triggered their fraud prevention system. I spent an hour on the phone proving I was actually the one depleting my savings for legal counsel. Emma's school sent home updated emergency contact forms during an active CPS investigation. They required current information for all authorized pickups. The secretary's voice was sympathetic but firm. Policies had to be adhered to. Sophie's blood pressure spiked again that night. The hospital called me as her emergency contact. She needed someone there, someone who could make decisions if complications arose. But Emma's recorded interview with the child psychologist was scheduled for the same time the next morning. Another impossible choice. Another snare Patricia had set. I sat with Sophie through the night, watching monitors, fetching ice chips, providing the support she desperately needed. My phone showed missed calls from the psychologist's office. Each missed call was another mark against me, another sign of concerning lack of engagement in my daughter's well-being. The morning brought Patricia herself. She swept into the hospital room carrying an elaborate bouquet, a local parenting blogger trailing behind her with a camera phone. I just had to check on family, Patricia announced loudly enough for the nurses to hear. Despite everything, family comes first. The blogger captured images as Patricia adjusted Sophie's pillows with exaggerated care. Within an hour, the pictures would be on social media. Local aunt supports pregnant niece despite false accusations. Patricia had transformed my absence from Emma's appointment into a public relations opportunity for herself. Emma's teacher called that afternoon. Her voice was carefully neutral as she explained that Patricia had volunteered as an emergency contact given the circumstances. The school could not discriminate based on family disputes, but they wanted what was best for Emma. The unspoken message was clear. Patricia was the stable one, the one who appeared while I was conspicuously absent. I began investigating Patricia's movements that day at the hospital. The visitor log was public record. My hands shook as I compared timestamps. Patricia had signed in at 9:47 a.m. The CPS report had been filed at 10:15 a.m. 30 minutes. Just enough time to make her way to the lobby and make a phone call. The security guard remembered her. Yes, the blonde lady. She seemed very distressed, making some important call by the coffee cart. He pointed to the corner of the lobby with a clear line of sight to the security office. Security footage would reveal everything. Patricia on her phone at the exact time the CPS report was filed. Proof of premeditation. Proof this was all orchestrated, but footage required a subpoena, and I had just been caught photographing the security office layout, attempting to ascertain their camera angles. The head of security escorted me out, warning me not to return without proper authorization. Patricia's father summoned me into his office the next day. My job performance review was spread across his desk. "You're distracted," he said, avoiding my eyes. "These audit reports require your approval, but I need to know you're focused on work, not family drama." The threat was obvious. My job, my income, my ability to advocate for Emma, all of it rested in the hands of Patricia's father. That evening, my brother finally reached out. His message made my blood run cold. "You're spiraling just like when Mom passed away. You blamed everyone but yourself then, too. Seek help." The words were his, but the phrasing was pure Patricia. She had fed him the exact narrative to promote. I was the unstable one, the one who could not let go, the one who needed assistance. Patricia's next action was astoundingly cruel. She created a social media group called Prayers for Emma. Within hours, concerned relatives and family friends were posting comments about my obvious distress and erratic behavior. Each comment became another piece of evidence for CPS, proof of community awareness of my supposed instability. Sophie attempted to defend me online, posting about Patricia's harassment, the workplace calls, the deliberate cruelty. But Patricia's lawyer screen captured every post, framing it as coordinated harassment by unstable individuals. Then came the final twist of the knife. Sophie's partner had abandoned her, leaving her without support. Patricia stepped in as her emergency contact at the hospital. She now controlled Sophie's visitor list, her prescription approvals. Sophie's prenatal vitamins required authorization. Patricia held all the leverage. The exhaustion was overwhelming. I had spent all night preparing CPS documentation, attempting to build my case with evidence and testimonies. At work the next day, I could not keep my eyes open. I dozed off at my desk for just a moment. Patricia's father documented it all. Impairment affecting job performance. Another piece of evidence for their case. My closest friend, Melissa, called that night in tears. Her daughter had a rare autoimmune condition. Patricia's husband was the only specialist in the state who treated it. "I believe you," Melissa sobbed. "But my daughter could die without his care. I can't provide a character reference. I'm so sorry." Even the grocery store became a battleground. The manager pulled me aside, embarrassed, but firm. Patricia had filed a complaint about feeling unsafe when I shopped there. Could I perhaps come during off-peak hours? Later, I discovered Patricia had filed a police report for stalking after we had crossed paths in the cereal aisle. Small victories felt hollow. Emma's teacher confirmed that the handwriting and spelling errors in the poems matched Emma's usual work. Patricia's claim that I had dictated them was clearly false. But what did it matter when the entire system was biased in her favor? My college roommate, now a social worker in another county, admitted Patricia had contacted her department weeks ago. Preemptive concerns filed about potential psychological abuse. The groundwork had been laid before the reunion even occurred. Every move I made to prove Patricia's falsehoods required admitting to something worse. Proving Patricia had lied about Sophie required admitting I had overheard their private conversation at family dinner. But Patricia had just filed a restraining order. That admission would violate it. When I finally proved one small lie, that Patricia had misrepresented a timeline, the victory was immediately distorted. "She's so fixated on Patricia that she's pursuing her at restaurants," became the new narrative. The CPS supervisor mentioned something during our meeting that chilled me. "This case is unusual," she said carefully. "Normally, poem content like this wouldn't warrant a full investigation. Someone is very influential and very concerned about your daughter's welfare." I left her office knowing the truth. This was not about Emma's poems or my parenting. This was Patricia systematically destroying me because I dared to resist. Patricia's strategy became clearer when she befriended my custody lawyer's receptionist through their shared parenting group. I discovered this accidentally when my motion for an expedited hearing mysteriously went missing. The receptionist apologized profusely, claiming the paperwork must have been misplaced. It happened again the following week with my evidence submission. Then my request for character witness statements vanished. Each time, Patricia seemed to know exactly what legal maneuvers I had attempted before my lawyer could even file them. Emma came home from school one afternoon with a troubled expression. She mentioned that Aunt Patricia had spoken to her during the school's autumn festival. Patricia had told her that Mommy might need special help soon, but not to worry because she would take care of Emma. My daughter could not recall the exact words, but the message was unmistakable. Patricia was planting seeds of doubt in my own child's mind. While organizing my phone to back up evidence, I found an old text message I had sent Sophie 3 months earlier. My stomach dropped as I read it. Patricia's such a expletive. Karma will get her. The timestamp showed I had sent it after Patricia had made another cruel comment about Sophie at a family barbecue. Patricia's lawyer had already submitted this as evidence in their emergency custody petition, portraying me as someone who had been planning revenge for months. The baby shower gifts I had collected for Sophie during the reunion started arriving at my apartment with passive-aggressive notes attached. Hope this reaches the right person, one card read. For someone who truly needs support, said another. Patricia had told the relatives I was exploiting a pregnant woman for my personal vendetta against her. The gifts kept coming, each note more pointed than the last. My doorbell camera captured me during a 3 a.m. panic attack on my front steps. I had gone outside to avoid waking Emma with my crying. The footage showed me pacing, pulling at my hair, clearly distressed. Patricia's lawyers subpoenaed the footage as evidence of mental instability. The timestamp coincided with the night before a custody hearing, which they argued showed I could not handle the pressure of parenting. During family court proceedings, I presented my evidence about Patricia's workplace interference. The judge reviewed it briefly before dismissing it as hearsay and part of an obsessive behavior pattern. Without direct proof, my accusations seemed like the ramblings of a bitter sister-in-law. Patricia sat across the courtroom, hands folded neatly, the picture of concerned stability. I convinced Sophie's colleague to check their internal complaint system. She discovered Patricia had accessed Sophie's schedule through her husband's medical credentials. The digital footprint showed someone using his login had viewed Sophie's shift patterns multiple times before the complaint was filed. It was the first concrete evidence of premeditation I had found. Patricia's social media stories about praying for family healing contained subtle timeline details that proved she had been planning the CPS report before the reunion. One post from 2 weeks before the party mentioned concerns about children being exposed to inappropriate content. Another referenced the importance of protecting innocent minds. She had been constructing her narrative for weeks. My therapist was compelled to break confidentiality when Patricia's lawyer raised concerns about revenge fantasies I had discussed in our sessions. I had been processing my anger in a healthy way, but taken out of context, my words sounded menacing. The therapist had no choice but to report it given the child welfare concerns now attached to my case. I attempted to record Patricia at Emma's school harvest festival, hoping to catch her making more inappropriate comments to my daughter. Patricia spotted my phone immediately and filed a harassment complaint with the principal. The school had no choice but to ban me from the grounds pending investigation. Patricia volunteered to handle Emma's pickup and drop-off to reduce conflict. School pickup became a battleground of its own. I had to stay 100 feet away while Patricia collected Emma. My daughter would reach for me crying, not understanding why mommy could not come closer. Patricia would speak soothingly to her, loud enough for other parents to hear, about how sometimes grown-ups need timeouts, too. My brother finally chose a side when Patricia threatened to expose a past driving under the influence incident he had gotten in college to his employer. He worked in financial services where such a revelation could end his career. He called me late one night, his voice thick with regret, explaining that he had to protect his own children. His wife had given him an ultimatum, and he could not risk losing everything. The psychological torment reached new heights when I noticed Patricia wearing Sophie's donated maternity clothes to court appearances. The monogrammed sweater Sophie had cherished, the dress she had saved for special occasions. Patricia wore them all. It was a calculated act of cruelty, a way to hurt both Sophie and me while appearing generous for accepting hand-me-downs. Patricia made an offer through her lawyer. She would drop everything if I signed an affidavit stating Sophie was emotionally unstable and unfit for patient care. The document would effectively end Sophie's nursing career, but would result in the CPS investigation being closed. I stared at the papers, knowing this was exactly what Patricia wanted, me choosing between Emma and Sophie. My refusal was immediately reframed in Patricia's emergency motion for temporary placement. I was choosing my vendetta over my daughter's well-being, prioritizing my need for revenge over Emma's stability. The motion painted me as someone so consumed with animosity that I had sacrificed my own child to harm Patricia. A breakthrough came when I discovered Patricia had called CPS from the hospital parking lot, not the lobby as I had initially thought. The security footage timestamp was incorrect due to a camera malfunction during a system update. It still proved Patricia's presence at the hospital during the crucial window, but the discrepancy made the evidence less compelling. Sophie had been more astute than any of us realized. She had been documenting Patricia's harassment in draft emails to herself, saved in an old email account Patricia did not know existed. Months of incidents, dates, times, witnesses, all carefully recorded. Sophie had known she might need evidence someday and had been quietly building her case. The true motive behind Patricia's cruelty finally emerged. Her cousin Marcus was Sophie's ex-partner. Patricia believed Sophie had ensnared and ruined him, destroying his future with her pregnancy. It was not just about moral superiority. It was personal. Patricia saw herself as avenging her cousin, protecting the family from Sophie's influence. My mother faced an impossible choice. Supporting me meant potentially losing access to her son and other grandchildren. Patricia had made it clear that anyone who testified on my behalf would be cut off from that side of the family. Mom chose careful neutrality, offering to supervise visits, but refusing to testify for either side. She could not bear to lose everyone. I started adopting Patricia's tactics. I joined her fitness center, timing my workouts to coincide with hers. I frequented her preferred coffee shop, always staying just within legal boundaries. I never approached her, never spoke to her, but my presence was a constant reminder that two could play this game. During a visit at my mother's house, I noticed Patricia's tablet on the kitchen counter. While supposedly checking the weather, I quickly accessed her call history. Screenshots revealed Patricia had obtained Sophie's employer information through my brother's professional network contacts, posing as a reference checker. The evidence was illegally obtained, but it showed the depth of her deception. Sophie's ex-partner Marcus suddenly reappeared, asserting paternity rights. Patricia had convinced him that Sophie had trapped him with the pregnancy, that he needed to protect his parental rights before Sophie could exclude him forever. Fighting custody and paternity battles simultaneously meant I missed Emma's therapy appointment. The therapist noted my absence as part of a pattern of disengagement. Legal fees drained my savings account, while Patricia used marital assets to fund her legal team. I watched my retirement fund vanish, my emergency savings evaporate. Every dollar spent on lawyers was a dollar not saved for Emma's future, a fact Patricia's team emphasized repeatedly. A confrontation erupted at Sophie's obstetrics appointment when Patricia appeared as concerned family. She had convinced the receptionist she was there to support Sophie, but her real purpose was intimidation. Security removed me when I tried to intervene, adding another incident to Patricia's growing documentation of my unstable behavior. Patricia's father called me into his office on a Friday afternoon. My termination was framed as performance issues and creating a hostile work environment. Multiple absences for court dates, the documented instance of sleeping at my desk, the distraction affecting my work. It all amounted to a paper trail supporting my dismissal. He said it was for everyone's good, avoiding my eyes as security packed up my desk. Moving back in with my parents was humiliating. Patricia posted constantly about providing Emma stability in her real home, sharing photos of my daughter's bedroom at their house, the new clothes she had bought her, the activities they did together. Each post was a deeper wound. My father begged me to let it go. He saw what the conflict was costing, not just financially, but emotionally. Emma was suffering, caught between two worlds. Patricia was winning because she had resources, connections, and most importantly, she could afford to continue fighting. I was running on empty, destroying myself in the process. My investigation into Patricia's connections caused unintended collateral damage. Sophie's supportive coworker was summoned to human resources about enabling workplace harassment by sharing information with me. The coworker's promotion was suddenly in jeopardy. Her judgment questioned. Her husband demanded she distance herself from both Sophie and me to protect their family's reputation and income. Despite knowing my actions were creating ripple effects of harm, I could not stop gathering evidence. Every piece of information felt crucial, every lead worth pursuing. Families were fragmenting, friendships ending, careers threatened, all because I could not let Patricia prevail. Emma's guardian ad litem asked me a question that stopped me cold. Have you considered that your obsession with Patricia is harming Emma? I opened my mouth to respond, to explain about the injustice, the falsehoods, the manipulation, but the words would not come because somewhere deep down, I knew she might be correct. In court, I admitted to recording Patricia without consent at the school event. It was a calculated risk, trading potential criminal charges for credibility. The judge noted my admission, but also emphasized the seriousness of violating recording consent laws. My honesty was overshadowed by my illegal actions. Sophie's draft emails revealed something painful. Months ago, I dismissed her early concerns about Patricia as trivial drama. She tried to tell me about the hostile glances, the whispered comments, the subtle exclusions. I had told her to rise above it, that Patricia was not worth our energy. I should have listened sooner. Patricia's lawyer filed for emergency advancement while my lawyer was handling the custody issue. I was forced to represent myself in the employment case, trying to navigate legal procedures I did not comprehend. I had to choose which battle to prioritize, knowing that dividing my attention meant losing ground on both fronts. The truth about Patricia's motivations became clearer. She genuinely believed she was protecting the family from moral decay. In her mind, Sophie represented everything wrong with modern society. Women who had children outside marriage who expected support despite their poor choices. My support of Sophie made me complicit in this moral failing. Patricia's own history explained so much. Her sister had been ostracized for getting pregnant as a teenager. Patricia's parents had severed all contact, maintaining that tough love was the only way to preserve family values. Patricia had internalized these lessons, believing ostracism was righteous rather than cruel. I crossed an ethical boundary I never thought I would. During visits with Emma, I started asking her to recall anything unusual Aunt Patricia did. I taught her to pay attention to conversations, to remember details that might help Mommy. I was using my 8-year-old daughter as an informant. The old version of me, the one who believed in doing the right thing, died completely. I taught Emma to write things down in her journal, knowing I was manipulating her innocence for my own purposes. When she mentioned Patricia kept a family planning binder, I asked her to remember any details she might see in it. A minor victory in proving Patricia's workplace interference felt hollow when I saw Emma flinch at raised voices during a court proceeding. My daughter, who once performed poetry with confidence, now recoiled from conflict. The trauma of our conflict was etched on her small face. Patricia's counterclaim gained traction. She argued I was parentally alienating Emma from her extended family through false accusations. The guardian ad litem noted Emma's conflicted feelings about family members, her confusion about why she could not see certain relatives. It looked exactly like parental alienation to an outside observer. Everything depended on Sophie's testimony. She was our crucial witness, the one who could verify Patricia's harassment firsthand. But during deposition preparation, Sophie went into premature labor. The stress of everything had finally pushed her body past its limits. As the ambulance took her away, I knew our case was collapsing. Patricia found new ways to twist the knife. When my past babysitting of Patricia's children came up, she coached them to ask why Mommy said I was sick. I could not explain the situation without harming innocent children, so I had to deflect their questions, appearing guilty in the process. The hospital staff began choosing sides based on whose spouse provided better insurance coverage. Patricia's husband's practice was stable and comprehensive. My future was uncertain. My ability to provide benefits non-existent. Colleagues who might have supported Sophie remained silent to protect their own family's healthcare. The judge explained something that shattered my remaining hope. Emergency custody changes required imminent physical danger, not patterns of emotional manipulation. Lying, manipulation, even orchestrated harassment did not meet the legal threshold without the threat of physical harm. The system was not designed to protect against Patricia's kind of cruelty. I reached out to Sophie's union representative, someone who owed me a favor from past workplace advocacy. She had helped me when I had supported her during a grievance procedure. She agreed to provide Sophie with an employment lawyer, but made it clear the union could not touch the custody battle. It was partial help that left me feeling more exposed than ever. Sophie's emails revealed she had known Patricia was escalating, but had stayed at the job to maintain insurance coverage for her baby. She had endured weeks of hostile treatment, documenting everything while pretending not to notice. The calculation was heartbreaking. She had chosen evidence gathering over immediate safety. Discovery produced a shocking find. Sophie had been recording Patricia's behavior in voice memos on her personal phone before the termination. The recordings included Patricia telling a coworker she would destroy that expletive and laughing about the complaint she had filed. It was the smoking gun we had been seeking. But the recording came at a cost. Sophie had endured weeks of workplace hostility to gather admissible evidence. She had risked her health, her pregnancy, her mental well-being to build a case. When I realized the sacrifice she had made, the calculated decision to stay in harm's way for future legal protection, I felt ill. I committed to using Sophie's evidence, even though it would expose her to a wrongful termination counterclaim. Patricia's husband's practice could claim she had violated workplace privacy policies by recording. Sophie could face financial ruin on top of everything else, but we were past the point of safe choices. Patricia's overconfidence finally created an opportunity. During court-ordered mediation, she admitted she had to protect family values from corruption. The mediator was required to report discriminatory statements, and Patricia had just confessed to discrimination based on marital status. It was a crack in her perfect facade. I learned to present evidence calmly without editorializing. Patricia's own words and actions spoke louder than any accusation I could make. The pattern of harassment across multiple venues, workplace, social media, family gatherings, became undeniable when laid out chronologically. Patricia realized too late that she had created a paper trail of her own cruelty. The judge reviewed our timeline with increasing concern. Phone records, voice memos, employment documents, social media posts, all painted a picture of systematic harassment. Patricia's careful planning had been too careful, leaving digital footprints everywhere. Both sides prepared for the final custody hearing with Sophie, due any day. The tension reached its breaking point. The courtroom filled with family members whose names appeared on witness lists. Patricia's parents took seats directly behind me, their presence a calculated intimidation tactic. My hands trembled as I organized my evidence folders, feeling their eyes boring into my back. Both Patricia and I showed visible signs of deterioration from our months-long conflict. My hair had thinned from stress, leaving patches where I had unconsciously pulled at it during sleepless nights. Patricia's hands moved constantly, washing invisible dirt from her fingers between each piece of testimony. The sanitizer smell followed her everywhere. The judge methodically reviewed our evidence. Phone records showing Patricia's calls to Sophie's workplace. Voice memos capturing her discriminatory language. Employment documents proving access through her husband's credentials. Social media posts revealing her premeditated timeline. Each piece built upon the last, creating an undeniable pattern of harassment. Patricia's mother stood unexpectedly during a recess. The courtroom fell silent as she approached the judge's clerk with shaking hands. She requested permission to testify about Patricia's history. The judge granted it, and Patricia's face drained of color as her mother took the stand. Mrs. Henderson spoke quietly about Patricia's teenage sister. Ostracized for pregnancy decades ago, she described Patricia's transformation from a compassionate child to someone who wielded righteousness like a weapon. Her voice broke as she admitted watching Patricia destroy her relationship with her own sister through the same pattern of moral superiority. She could not watch it happen again. The judge ordered immediate psychological evaluations for all parties involved. Patricia's evaluation revealed deep-seated trauma from her family's rigid moral structure. My evaluation showed severe anxiety and hypervigilance from months of systematic attacks. Emma's evaluation broke my heart. She displayed signs of confusion and divided loyalty that would require extensive therapy. Sophie's voice memos underwent authentication by an audio expert. His analysis noted escalating hostility in Patricia's language over time. The discriminatory phrases became more frequent and aggressive as Sophie's pregnancy progressed. He classified the recordings as clear evidence of workplace harassment based on pregnancy and marital status. The evidence proved Patricia's harassment and defamation beyond doubt. Yet, it also revealed something more complex. Patricia genuinely believed she was protecting family values. Her actions stemmed from disturbed reasoning rather than criminal intent. She saw Sophie as a threat to everything their family represented, a corruption that would spread to younger generations if left unchecked. Patricia's breakdown on the witness stand shocked everyone. She sobbed uncontrollably, insisting Sophie would destroy their family's foundation. She spoke about moral decay, about standards slipping, about the duty to protect innocent children from bad examples. Her pain was real, even if her methods were unconscionable. The judge faced a difficult decision. Criminal harassment charges would mean jail time for Patricia, further traumatizing Emma and other family children. Family court resolution would focus on custody and protective orders without criminal penalties. He offered me the choice. I thought about Emma's flinching at raised voices, about the confusion in her eyes when family members fought, about the therapy she would need regardless of the outcome. Sophie sat beside me, 9 months pregnant and exhausted. She squeezed my hand and nodded. We both knew what mattered most. I chose family court resolution. No criminal charges, no jail time, just custody determinations and workplace protections. The judge nodded approvingly at the decision that prioritized Emma's well-being over revenge. The custody ruling came down carefully balanced. I retained primary physical custody of Emma. Patricia received supervised therapeutic visitation contingent on completing intensive therapy, addressing her rigid moral framework and harassment behaviors. The judge mandated co-parenting counseling for both of us despite our mutual hostility. Workplace protections for Sophie included a restraining order preventing Patricia or her husband from contacting any current or future employers. Sophie's union lawyer successfully negotiated a settlement with her former employer acknowledging wrongful termination based on the voice memo evidence. The amount was not life-changing, but it provided stability for her and the baby. The family fractured permanently along battle lines. My brother filed for separation from Patricia after learning the full extent of her actions. Some relatives sided with Patricia, believing Sophie had indeed corrupted family values. Others supported me, but maintained careful distance to preserve relationships on both sides. Family gatherings, as we had known them, would never happen again. I found employment at a discount retail store, starting over at minimum wage. The job was mundane but stable, allowing me to focus on Emma's healing. Patricia entered intensive therapy, court-mandated, but seemingly genuine in her participation. Reports indicated she was beginning to understand how her parents' rejection of her sister had shaped her own cruel behaviors. Sophie delivered a healthy baby girl 3 days after the final hearing. I held her hand through labor, the only family member present. She named her daughter Grace, hoping for a fresh start, unmarred by the conflicts that preceded her birth. Marcus never appeared to claim his paternity rights. His interest evaporated once Patricia's influence waned. Emma's therapy sessions revealed the depth of her confusion. She loved Aunt Patricia despite everything, and could not understand why adults who claimed to love each other caused such pain. Her therapist worked patiently to help her process the trauma of being caught between warring relatives. Progress came slowly, measured in small victories like Emma sleeping through the night without nightmares. My parents struggled to maintain relationships with both sides of the fractured family. They hosted separate holiday celebrations, careful never to mention one group to the other. The strain showed in their faces, aged by the conflict that had torn their children apart. They supervised Patricia's visits with Emma, neutral ground in an ongoing dispute. 6 months into the new arrangement, Patricia's therapy reports showed genuine progress. She had begun to acknowledge the harm her actions caused, though she still struggled with believing her motivations were wrong. Her therapist noted she was working through decades of internalized trauma from her own family's rigid moral structure. I built a new career slowly, taking online courses while Emma slept. A certificate in human resources led to an entry-level position at a nonprofit helping workplace harassment victims. The pay was not much better than retail, but the work felt meaningful. I understood firsthand what victims faced when powerful people weaponized systems against them. Sophie returned to nursing at a different hospital, one with no connections to Patricia's husband. She worked part-time initially, rebuilding her confidence while caring for Grace. We supported each other through the difficult days, trauma-bonded, but determined to heal. Her daughter grew surrounded by love, if not by extended family. Emma gradually adjusted to our new normal. She stopped asking when everyone would be together again, accepting that some divisions could not be mended. Her relationship with Patricia evolved under therapeutic supervision, learning healthy boundaries that had not existed before. The confusion faded, replaced by a premature understanding of human complexity. My brother attempted reconciliation after his divorce was finalized. Our relationship remained strained, marked by his betrayal when Patricia threatened his career. He saw Emma during my parents' supervised visits. Awkward interactions heavy with unspoken recriminations. Trust, once broken, proved impossible to fully restore. The financial impact lingered for years. Legal fees had drained my retirement savings, Emma's college fund, every emergency buffer I had built. Starting over in my 40s meant accepting that some aspirations would never materialize. But Emma was safe, Sophie was free, and Patricia could no longer weaponize systems against us. Patricia's transformation continued slowly. Court reports indicated she had cut contact with family members who reinforced her rigid worldview. She was building new relationships through therapy groups, learning empathy that had been trained out of her in childhood. Her supervised visits with Emma became less strained as she practiced healthier interaction patterns. 1 year after the custody ruling, I watched Emma perform in her school play. She stood confidently on stage, no longer the traumatized child who flinched from conflict. Sophie sat beside me, Grace sleeping in her arms. Patricia watched from the back row, permitted by court, but maintaining appropriate distance. We were broken but enduring.